All right, so now I'm going to walk you through our language activity for the day. You're going to look at 4 vocab words. Some of these you've already had and should be familiar with, okay? The 4 words are oppression, resistance, civil disobedience, and boycott. But first we're going to look at oppression and resistance, okay? So oppression is the cruel or unjust treatment or control over a long period of time. So people who are being oppressed are not being treated equally and do not have the same rights as other people in their same society. Resistance means the refusal to accept or go along with something. This can be violent or nonviolent. So often when people are oppressed for long enough, they will get together and form a unity together and resist, right? Resist a government that is oppressing them. So what you're going to do are take those 2 words. You're going to read these 2 scenarios. Decide which one is an example of oppression and which one is an example of resistance. So for scenario 1, for much of the history of the United States, women were not allowed to vote. They were not able to have their opinions heard or to have a say in how the country was run. So is that oppression or resistance? Is that the cruel or unjust treatment or control over a long period of time, or is it people refusing to accept? You're going to write your answer here. Scenario 2. In 1839, on the slave ship Amistad, a group of enslaved Africans led by Sangbe Pei broke out of their chains, killed most of their captors, and took control of the ship. Now, is that oppression or is that an example of resistance? So a key point here is that the resistant movements we are going to learn about this week use nonviolent forms of resistance, such as civil disobedience and boycotts. So these 2 words are examples of resistance, specifically nonviolent resistance. Okay? So civil disobedience means to peacefully refuse to follow certain laws. And then boycott, refusing to buy something as a form of protest. Often people today throw that around like, I don't know, somebody doesn't like something that a company said or something they do, and they're like, let's boycott them. Okay. But they can be very, very powerful tool, especially as a nonviolent resistance way. So your task is what you just did for the other ones. Read the 2 scenarios and decide which one is an example of civil disobedience and which one is an example of boycott. So scenario 3, in the 1990s, Nike was accused of using child labor in their factories and making people work in horrible conditions for low pay. Some people refused to buy Nike shoes in response. So is this an example of civil disobedience or boycotting? If you need help, you can go back to these terms up here. And then scenario 4, Rosa Parks famously refused to move to the back of the bus, even though Jim Crow laws said that she had to give up her seat if a white person wanted it. Is that an example of civil disobedience or boycott, and why? All right, I will post another video here for a guided practice.